everyone, my name is Hannah. Welcome to another recap video. So this recap video is going to be all about Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. It's also known as The Crimson Moth. For my copy, that's the name of the series, and we call it Heartless Hunter, but I know that in like the UK and probably other places in the world, it's called The Crimson Moth, which I'm not quite sure why they did that. I feel like it could be a little confusing, but this is going to be all about this book. It's going to be pretty in-depth on what happens in this book, just to kind of recap for when the next book comes out. So there will definitely be spoilers in this, and I'm going to go through like some of the very pivotal and key scenes in this book. So if you haven't read it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, make sure you don't watch this video. Alright, so let's get right into it. So this book is a kind of new adult fantasy romance. It teeters between the edge of like upper young adult, but maybe not quite adult yet. It's right in that middle gray area. And we are following this young woman called Rune Winters. And Rune is a witch, but she's kind of a little bit in hiding because witches are hunted by the Blood Guard in this empire. So she's got to kind of keep the fact that she's a witch on the down low, or else she'll be killed. And so to kind of like disguise herself, she pretends to be this like ditzy airhead socialite who's kind of shallow and vapid so that nobody really looks too closely at her and realizes that underneath that facade, she's actually quite intelligent, and she's actually the Crimson Moth, who is a witch who has been kind of rescuing and saving witches from the Blood Guard. She's a little bit of like a vigilante. So the witches in this world use blood magic, so they need to like cut themselves in order to use their blood to perform their magic. And typically witches are discovered because they've got like, they call them these casting marks, or like these scars on them. When they are discovered, they are executed in a somewhat brutal way. They're like hung upside down with their throat cut, and so that all the blood runs out of them. It's pretty brutal. And we find out right away that Rune actually turned her grandmother in, and so her grandmother was executed when she was younger. The reason why she turned them in is because somebody was tipping off the Blood Guard, and they were going to come for her grandmother either way. And at the time, Rune did not know that she was a witch, and so she could have been in big trouble for like harboring a witch, and she would have been like shunned from society and lost everything. And so her grandmother basically said, like, you have to turn me in. I'm gonna die anyways. Like, they're gonna find me anyways. So if you turn me in, then Rune would be able to like keep the house, keep her social standing and stuff, and just basically wouldn't have to lose everything. And so that's what Rune decided to do. And she's always felt kind of guilty about that because like obviously her grandmother died because of that, but even though it like wasn't really her fault, she still feels this guilt. And so that is why she's become like this witch vigilante. We also have another point of view, Gideon Sharp, and he is the captain of the Blood Guard. And not only that, he is Rune's best friend's brother. So her best friend Alex and her have been friends since they were children, and Alex's older brother is Gideon, and he and Rune have never really like gotten along. He kind of like looks down at her because she pretends to be this like vapid socialite, and he thinks that there's not much substance to her, and so he's kind of just like ignored her their whole lives. But Gideon is trying to find the Crimson Moth, and Rune is a suspect for being the Crimson Moth because something was found on her ship that kind of links her to the Crimson Moth's activities. And so Gideon is going to try to get close to Rune to try to like find out her secrets, find out if she is the Crimson Moth or if she's working with the Crimson Moth. And Rune is trying to get closer to Gideon because he is a Blood Guard captain, so he has information that she's trying to get, and she wants to find out how she can save this witch called Seraphine, which was her grandmother's best friend. And so she's trying to save this witch, and then she's trying to get like intel from Gideon. And so they both have like ulterior motives. Gideon is trying to like pretend to court her, and then Rune is pretending to be courted so that she can get information from him, and he's trying to get information from her. And neither one obviously knows that they're both trying to kind of use each other. So Gideon hates witches because his parents were very like famous tailors. And so when the witches were like ruling this empire, there were 3 witch queens, and his parents and his whole family were basically pulled to the castle so that they could make dresses and make outfits and stuff for these witch queens. And so Gideon's comes from this like family of tailors, and says some kind of ominous things about one witch queen in specific, which was Cressida Roseblood. We know that basically Gideon's whole family was murdered by witches, everyone except for Alex, because he and Alex managed to escape. And basically Gideon and Alex were the ones who like took down the witch queens because they killed their little sister, they killed both their parents, and we just know that these witch queens were not really great people. We do find out that Gideon was pretty close with Cressida. Basically, they were lovers, and she was very toxic, very abusive, and very emotionally manipulative, and was just awful to him and like played with his emotions and would try to like get revenge on him for things and punish him for things. So she was just really horrible to him. And eventually, when it became too much, after their little sister was killed and their parents were killed, Gideon and Alex kind of take down the witch queens, and Alex kills Cressida so that Gideon doesn't have to, because he's got these conflicting emotions. So Gideon, being these talented tailor's son, is also quite the talented tailor and offers to make a dress for Rune for this big like ball that's coming up. And so it's kind of like a flirty moment for them where he's like getting her measurements and stuff, and he's just really talented at making dresses. Also do see from Gideon's point of view that he believes that Alex is in love with Rune, and so he has this like conflict within him of like, I'm just using Rune, I'm not actually falling for her even though he is, but like my little brother is in love with her and he's the only one I've got left in this world and I don't want to betray him. We also find out that Gideon is going to these like fighting pits because everybody pretty much hates him because he slept with one of the witch queens and they like knew him as like the witch queen's whore basically. And he just goes there to get like the shit kicked out of him, kind of takes it on as like his own kind of punishment. As Rune and Gideon are doing their little like flirtatious things where they're both in their heads saying like, I'm not actually falling for this person, I'm just using them, but really they are starting to fall for each other. Gideon ends up giving Rune some faulty intel about Seraphine, and so Rune goes as the Crimson Moth to try to save her, and obviously it's a trap and she almost gets caught and almost gets discovered, but she does manage to escape, and they agree that they were going to meet at this ball. And so Gideon's like, if she is there, like obviously if she fell for the trap, all he told was Rune, so nobody else should have known about it, so she has to somehow be involved. So he goes to like arrest her for treason or whatever, and then he finds out that she basically told all of her friends at her luncheon earlier in the day all about it because she's just a ditzy socialite and like, why wouldn't she do that? And so he's like, oh, now anybody could have known, so it could be anybody, it's not just Rune. So he's still like suspicious of her, but also like there's too much conflicting evidence to like really take her down. Meanwhile, Alex is telling Rune that he plans to leave the Republic and is going to this place where witches are actually like safe and they aren't being killed all the time, and he wants to go there for school and he wants Rune to come with him. So he says he's going for just a month. But Rune really still feels that guilt of what happened with her grandmother and feels kind of responsible for saving all of these witches in her town. We do get this really cute scene of Rune and Gideon at night when they go like skinny dipping. And Gideon is basically telling himself like he wants to get Rune undressed so he can like check her for scars so he knows whether she's a witch or not, even though Rune doesn't use her magic that way. She uses like her menstrual cycle blood to cast spells and stuff, so she just keeps it like in little vials and stuff so that she doesn't have any evidence that she's a witch. And so it's like a ruse for Gideon to like check her scars, but really it's just like to get her naked. And then of course they share this kiss, and so they're both feeling conflicted because they're falling for each other. Then, because Rune was the one who turned her grandmother in, everybody in the Republic is kind of like, oh, what a brave little thing she is, like turning in her own grandmother. Like, obviously she really believes in like witches are terrible, and she's become kind of this like icon of this political scheme to be against witches. And so they select Rune to be the one who's going to execute Seraphine. And Rune is starting to panic because there's all these people around her and she's like, I can't do any magic now without them realizing it. I don't want to kill her. Like, what do I do? But before she can even get close to Seraphine, this like crazy fire starts out, and it looks like it's targeting Rune. Rune realizes that it is some kind of spell fire, but it's not coming from her. So it's coming from some other witch. It's not coming from Seraphine either. So whoever is creating this fire is also a witch. And then once Gideon saves Rune from this fire, he realizes that the casting signature from that fire is Cressida Roseblood, who is supposed to be dead, but clearly she's not. Alex then tells Rune that he actually didn't kill Cressida. He tried to, he had the opportunity to, but he's just like not that kind of guy. And so he let her escape and basically said, if you ever come after me or my brother again, I will kill you this time. But he let her go, and hindsight, probably shouldn't have done that. He makes Rune promise that she won't tell a soul, so she can't actually tell Gideon that Cressida is alive. And clearly Cressida is coming after the people that Gideon cares about. She is like I said, super toxic, super abusive, very controlling, and thinks that Gideon is like her belonging, basically. There's a witch attack that is like this giant explosion right where Gideon is, and there's a bunch of Bloodguard that are like injured and killed in this big like witch attack explosion, and Rune finds out about it and hasn't heard anything from Gideon, so she's super worried, but Gideon did survive, and Rune realizes like how worried she really was and how much she really cares for him, and she's starting to realize like, hey, I'm actually a little bit in love with this person. So she's so relieved when she finds out that he's alive, and they end up sleeping together. Gideon obviously starts to admit his feelings then for her, and it's not just a ruse anymore. It's not just a game between them. He actually does really love her, and so when they sleep together, it's like this really cute moment that is immediately ruined the next morning because Gideon's like partner basically is like questioning whether he's been compromised. Like, can his intel about Rune be trusted because he's like fallen for her now? And so he's trying to convince his partner that he's not compromised. And so he's like, I didn't even care about her. I have had better. Like, mostly it was just something to do. Like, makes it seem like it wasn't a big deal to him at all. And of course, Rune overhears that and runs away. And she runs to Alex, who then is telling her he wants to keep her safe. He wants her to come with him to like out of the Republic or whatever. And he proposes to her. And Rune is like heartbroken after what happened with Gideon, reeling with the fact that she thinks he doesn't like her and he was using her, and she feels so betrayed by that. And so she kind of accepts Alex's proposal because she's like, he's my best friend, like I don't feel about him that way, but like maybe I could grow to have romantic feelings for him, and like I could spend the rest of my life with him because who else am I gonna do it with? So she accepts his proposal. Gideon goes over to Rune's house and is kind of waiting for her to explain himself, and he ends up finding Rune's secret casting room with all of her like books of spells and all of her little like vials of stuff and her like stored vials of blood so that she can do magic. And so then of course he realizes that she is actually a witch, and this whole time she's been lying to him, she's been lying to everybody, and so he then feels betrayed as well because she's a witch. And of course he hates witches, so he's like got these conflicting emotions of I hate witches, but the person that I love is actually a witch. And he realizes then that she's not just a witch, she's actually the Crimson Moth, and so that's a whole other can of worms. We then get the reveal that Rune's other friend, who I haven't really mentioned up until now because she's really just like a side character who is just around Rune and Alex, but it's her friend Verity, and like everything that Verity has been telling her is a lie, and Verity is actually not Verity. Verity is Cressida. So when Gideon found out that Rune was a witch, he has her arrested. Her and Seraphine are being taken, and Cressida / Verity comes to save them both with this like big witch army, and there's like a battle between the Bloodguard and the witches. Cressida goes to shoot Gideon, and then Alex jumps in front of the bullet and gets shot himself. And as he's dying in Rune's arms, he tells her that it's okay for her to like use his blood to like do a spell or something. So she uses his blood to create this like massive crack in the town, and then this big like crevice erupts in the earth, splitting the witch army from the Blood Guard. And then Gideon's last words to Rune from across this like big crevice is that, "I will never stop hunting you, Rune Winters. No matter where you go, I will come for you." And that's pretty much the end of the book. Basically, they go their separate ways, and that's where we leave off. So the next book is going to be back to kind of an enemies to lovers situation. So it was enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers, I think is what we're gonna get here, and I'm really excited for it. So there you have it. That is the very in-depth recap for Heartless Hunter / the Crimson Moth. So the second book and the final book, because this is a duology, is called Rebel Witch, and that comes out February 18th of 2025. At least that's what the date is on Goodreads. That could change. But yeah, we're going to get like an enemies to lovers to enemies again to hopefully lovers. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really happy that this is a duology, because I feel like a lot of series try to like stretch things out too far, but I feel like this story can be easily wrapped up in 2 books. And I'm really excited to see what happens with Rune and Gideon in the next book. So hopefully you found this recap helpful, especially for when the second book does come out. I mean, I know I'm posting it and it's like months and months away, yeah, almost a year away, but I wanted to film the recap while the story was still fresh in my head and stuff. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on this book down below, what rating you gave it, and what your predictions are for the second book. And thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.